US President Donald Trump at the G20 summit. That's the summit that is all set to begin in Osaka in Japan. The theme of this year's summit under the Japanese presidency is human-centered future society. And the focus will be on a range of issues like digital economy and artificial intelligence. The city of Osaka will soon be flooded with leaders from across the world. The who's who of global politics will take over the streets in what is the biggest summit this year. Schools have been closed. Security has been tightened as security officials expect an extra 30,000 people to be present in the city. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be going to Japan for 2 days, 28th and the 29th of June, to participate in that summit. This will be the 6th G20 that he's participating in since 2014 and the first in his second term. New Delhi is expected to strongly raise the issue of economic offenders and black money.
Very keen that the economic offenders and those who are the perpetrators of economic crimes, the holders of black money, should be brought to book. Those who are running away from India should be brought back, and no country should provide them shelter.
Other than this, climate change, countering terrorism and WTO reforms will be the other focus areas for India. The summit is taking place in the backdrop of a trade war between world's number one and number two economies, US and China, and Washington's diminishing commitment to the World Trade Organization.
See, India is of a strong view that global trade should be free from any restrictions, encumbrances. Multilateralism should prevail. It should happen under the aegis of World Trade Organization. The reforming World Trade Organization is necessary, but it should happen in a way that all the countries of the world will have a right to decide how it should be. The WTO should be a forum for growth, forum for equity, forum for inclusiveness.
And as always, Prime Minister Modi will be meeting leaders at the summit. He will be meeting Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, US President Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Chinese President Xi Jinping. During last year's summit in the Argentinian capital, Prime Minister Modi met leaders under the GAI, which is Japan, America, India grouping, the RIC, the Russia, India and China grouping, and a permanent fixture has been the informal BRICS summit. But the big focus will also be on the much talked about meeting between US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping to resolve issues on trade. The US-Iran tiff is also expected to dominate the discourse throughout the summit. WION's diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal is tracking the latest from Osaka.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be participating at the 14th G20 summit in Osaka. This will be his 6th G20 summit since 2014. But first, in his second term, India will be raising issues such as offenders, economic offenders being provided safe haven, black money, and energy security. And of course, the Indian Prime Minister will be meeting a whole host of world leaders, including US President Donald Trump, France's Macron, Russian President Vladimir Putin, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and Prime Minister of Japan Shinzo Abe. All in all, he will be having 10 bilaterals and policides all combined. And we also know that there will be two important trilaterals, the Japan, America and India J trilateral, the first of whose meeting took place in last year's G20 summit in Buenos Aires, and the RIC meeting, the Russia, India, China meeting, which has been a tradition. Also an informal BRICS meeting also will be taking place, an important meeting which has become a permanent fixture in the sidelines of the G20 summit.
All right, turning our attention now to the latest coming in from Hong Kong, where protesters are determined to get their message out during the G20 summit, even where mainland China has said that no discussions on Hong Kong will take place. They've organized a crowdfunding campaign to finance front-page newspaper advertisements urging G20 nations to get involved. They plan to submit a petition to each consulate asking their governments to confront Chinese President Xi Jinping at the summit this weekend. The protesters will be visiting the US consulate, European Union office and the UK consulate. Meanwhile, UK Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt has urged Hong Kong to set up an independent investigation into the violence during the recent mass protests. Addressing members of parliament, Hunt expressed concern over the actions by Hong Kong's law enforcement agencies, including police firing tear gas and rubber bullets.
We remain very concerned with the situation in Hong Kong, and I raised those concerns with the Chief Executive on the 12th of June. I today urge the Hong Kong SAR government to establish a robust, independent investigation into the violent scenes that we saw. The outcome of that investigation will inform our assessment of future export licence applications to the Hong Kong police, and we will not issue any further export licences for crowd control equipment to Hong Kong unless we are satisfied that concerns raised on human rights and fundamental freedoms have been thoroughly addressed.
Now, Hunt's decision means that export licenses would not be approved until concerns about human rights abuses in Hong Kong were thoroughly addressed. Remember, protests in Hong Kong began after the Chief Executive, Carrie Lam, tried to push through a legislation that would have allowed suspects for some crimes to be forced to take trial in the Communist Party-dominated courts in mainland China.